You've been lied to your entire life about what skin color means. Not by one person, not by one book, by centuries of people who needed a simple answer to justify complicated cruelty. They looked at human skin, the most visible difference between people, and they built empires of meaning around it. Hierarchies, laws, wars, entire systems of power resting on the shade of a person's body. But here's what they never told you. The real reason humans come in different colors has nothing to do with superiority. Nothing to do with origin stories or divine design or cultural destiny. It has to do with a star 93 million miles away, and a problem your ancestors had to solve just to stay alive. This is the true story of human skin. And once you understand it, you'll never look at a person the same way again. Start with a body. A naked, sweating, ancient body. About 2 million years ago, something unusual was happening on the African savanna. A primate was losing its fur. Now fur, for most mammals, is non-negotiable. It's insulation, it's camouflage, it's armor against the sun. A thick coat of hair means sunlight never even reaches the skin. But this particular primate, our ancestor, was doing something no other large mammal was doing. It was hunting in the middle of the day, under full sun, across wide open ground. And fur, it turns out, is terrible for that. A fur-covered body running in direct sunlight overheats fast. The muscles get hot, the brain gets hot, everything starts to shut down. But a mostly hairless body that can sweat? That's a different machine entirely. Sweat evaporates off bare skin and pulls heat out of the body. It's one of the most efficient cooling systems in the animal kingdom. And it works best, only works properly, on skin that isn't covered in thick hair. So our ancestors made a trade. They gave up fur. They gained the ability to run for hours in conditions that would stop a lion, a hyena, anything else in its tracks. They could follow prey across the savanna until the animal simply collapsed from exhaustion. Persistence hunting, chasing something to death, became one of early humanity's greatest survival advantages. But the trade came with a cost, because now the sky had direct access to the skin. And near the equator, the sky is not neutral. It's aggressive. Sunlight is not just light. Buried inside sunlight is ultraviolet radiation, UV, invisible to the eye, but powerful enough to reach through skin and interfere with the chemistry happening underneath. UV can damage DNA. UV can cause mutations. UV can break down molecules your body depends on to survive. One of those molecules is folate. Folate is a B vitamin, simple enough on the surface. But folate is involved in some of the most critical processes in the human body. Building new cells, repairing damaged DNA, supporting the development of a fetus in early pregnancy, maintaining healthy sperm. Without sufficient folate, reproduction doesn't just become harder. It can become impossible. Pregnancies fail. Birth defects increase. The machinery of making the next generation starts to break down. And in the logic of evolution, reproduction isn't a detail. It's the entire point. A body can be strong, fast, intelligent, perfectly designed in every way that seems to matter. But if it can't successfully produce and raise offspring, evolution has no use for it. That body's line ends. Its adaptations disappear. The experiment is over. So here were our ancestors, fur gone, skin exposed, living directly under one of the most intense UV environments on Earth. Bodies that couldn't protect their folate didn't reproduce as successfully. Over thousands of generations, that pressure added up. The bodies that survived and thrived were the ones that developed a shield. That shield was melanin. Melanin is not just pigment, it's protection. Melanin is the molecule responsible for skin color, hair color, eye color. But calling it a coloring agent is like calling a bulletproof vest a fashion choice. The color is a side effect. The function is defense. When UV radiation hits the skin, melanin absorbs it and scatters it, neutralizing it before it can penetrate deep enough to damage DNA or break down folate. The more melanin present in the skin, the more UV gets neutralized, the better the protection. And so, in populations that lived under intense tropical sunlight for thousands of generations, bodies with more melanin, darker skin, had a survival and reproductive advantage. They protected folate better. Their pregnancies were more successful. Their children were healthier. Their lines continued. Over time, darker skin became the norm in those environments. Not because of anything cultural, not because of anything spiritual, because of chemistry, ultraviolet radiation, and the relentless math of survival. Dark skin was the first sunscreen, and it worked. Then humans left. This is where the story gets complicated and fascinating, starting roughly 70,000 years ago. Though the timeline is still being refined, groups of Homo sapiens began pushing out of Africa. Slowly, generation by generation, following coastlines and river systems and game herds, humans spread into new territories: the Middle East, South Asia, Europe, Central Asia, eventually the Americas, the Pacific, every corner of the planet. And as they moved, the sky changed. The farther north you go from the equator, the weaker the UV radiation becomes. The angle of the sun changes. The atmosphere filters out more. In Northern Europe, in Scandinavia, in parts of Russia, UV levels in winter drop so low that for months at a time, the sun barely delivers any meaningful ultraviolet radiation at all. For a body with dark skin evolved under the African equator, this created a new crisis. Because UV isn't only a threat, it's also a resource. Your skin is a solar panel. Specifically, it manufactures vitamin D using UVB, a specific wavelength of ultraviolet light. When UVB hits the skin, it triggers a chemical reaction that eventually produces vitamin D3 in the body. And vitamin D is not optional. Vitamin D regulates calcium absorption, which means it's essential for building and maintaining bones. It supports immune function. It's involved in muscle function, cardiovascular health, brain development. Without enough of it, the body starts to fail in quiet, devastating ways. In children, severe vitamin D deficiency causes rickets, a disease where bones don't harden properly. Legs bow under the weight of the body. The spine curves. The skull deforms. Growth is stunted. In adults, deficiency weakens bones, suppresses immunity, increases the risk of complications during pregnancy and childbirth. In an ancient world without medical intervention, these weren't inconveniences. They were death sentences. So now the equation had flipped. In low UV environments, dark skin. All that melanin that was so protective near the equator was blocking too much of the limited UVB the body desperately needed. The shield had become an obstacle. The bodies that could let more UV in, the ones with less melanin, had a real advantage. They made more vitamin D. Their bones were stronger. Their pregnancies were safer. Their children survived more often. And over thousands of generations, populations in low UV environments gradually shifted toward lighter skin. Not because cold made them pale. Cold has nothing to do with it. Plenty of cold environments have strong UV. High-altitude mountains, for instance. The variable that mattered was ultraviolet radiation. That was always the driver. Light skin evolved to solve a chemistry problem. That's it. But evolution never works cleanly. If the story were simple, you'd expect a perfect gradient. Darkest at the equator, lightest at the poles, everything in between arranged neatly by latitude. And broadly, that pattern does exist. But the real world is messier than any clean theory. Take the Inuit and other Arctic peoples. They live at extreme northern latitudes with very low UV levels for much of the year. By the simple gradient logic, they should have the palest skin on Earth, but they don't. Their skin is considerably darker than other populations at similar latitudes in Europe. Why? Diet. Traditional Arctic diets are built around marine life: fish, seal, whale, walrus. These foods are extraordinarily rich in vitamin D. When your food is solving the vitamin D problem, your skin doesn't need to. The UV pressure to lighten is removed. The melanin stays. This is crucial because it reveals something important. Skin color was never controlled by one factor. It was always a negotiation between multiple pressures: UV intensity, diet, migration history, genetic drift, chance. The result is not a neat chart, but a complex, beautiful, overlapping gradient of human variation. And here's the part that dismantles the entire concept of biological race. There are no borders. Walk from Central Africa northward, slowly, the way ancient populations actually moved over thousands of years. You will not find a line where one type of human ends and another begins. You will find a gradual, continuous shift in average skin tone, hair texture, facial features. A fade, not a fence. Every group bleeds into the next. Every category created by humans to divide these gradual changes is a human invention layered on top of biological reality. The biology says gradient. History said boxes. And then violence enforced the boxes until people forgot the gradient was ever there. And then it gets even stranger. Lighter skin didn't evolve the same way in every population that has it. The genetic mutations associated with lighter skin in European populations are largely different from the mutations associated with lighter skin in East Asian populations. Evolution arrived at a similar outcome: less melanin in low UV environments, through different genetic routes, independently, twice. This means there was no single ancestral white population from which all light-skinned people descend. Lightness evolved separately, in different places, at different times, through different biological mechanisms. Similarly, darker skin in populations across Africa, South Asia, and other high UV regions reflects similar adaptations that arose in different lineages, not a single shared dark ancestry. The categories of race that feel so solid, so permanent, so biological, are categories that don't actually exist in the genome the way people assume. What exists is variation. Continuous, overlapping, context-dependent variation that was shaped by sunlight and diet and migration and time. The first Homo sapiens were almost certainly dark-skinned compared to most humans alive today. Our species evolved in Africa. Africa has high UV. Melanin was the solution. But those ancient humans weren't black in any meaningful modern social sense. They were ancient people with skin adapted to ancient African sunlight. The social meaning came thousands of years later, built by civilizations that needed someone to be the other. The biology never asked for any of that. So what is skin color? Really? It's a dial. On one end, too much UV destroys folate, damages DNA, breaks down reproduction. On the other end, too little UV means not enough vitamin D, weak bones, failed pregnancies, death. Melanin adjusts the dial. More of it where UV is intense, less of it where UV is scarce. The goal, always, is balance. Enough UV blocked to protect, enough UV absorbed to function. Skin color is the body's answer to that daily negotiation between a star and a cell. It evolved more than once. It changed over time. It got lighter when populations moved north. It stayed dark where marine diets provided vitamin D. It exists on a spectrum with no clean divisions. It is not fixed, not permanent in evolutionary terms, not a marker of anything except where your ancestors lived and what the sky above them was like. Every skin tone is a survival record. Dark skin is not primitive. It's precision engineering for high radiation environments. Light skin is not advanced. It's precision engineering for low radiation environments. Brown skin is not a middle ground. It's its own specific solution to its own specific set of pressures. They are all correct. They are all sophisticated. They are all the result of the same ruthless, elegant, impersonal process that shaped every feature of every living thing on this planet. And then the modern world arrived and broke every rule. Today, a person whose entire ancestry was shaped by the cloudy skies of Northern Europe can spend their life under the scorching sun of equatorial Africa. A person whose ancestors built melanin-rich skin over thousands of generations under tropical UV can spend their entire life in a northern city that barely sees the sun 6 months a year. The skin you were born with carries ancient instructions for an ancient sky. But you might spend your whole life under a completely different one. That mismatch has real health consequences. Higher rates of vitamin D deficiency in darker-skinned populations living at northern latitudes, higher rates of skin cancer in lighter-skinned populations living under intense UV. Your biology is still running old software in a new world. But here's the deeper truth, that the mismatch reveals skin color was never about identity. It was never about character or intelligence or worth or destiny. It was about a very specific interaction between the human body and the amount of ultraviolet radiation falling on a particular patch of Earth. That's it. Your skin is a map, not a hierarchy, not a verdict, a map. It traces the route your ancestors walked across this planet over tens of thousands of years. Every shade tells you something about where those people were, what they ate, how intense the light was above them, how long they stayed. It is the most visible evidence of human migration ever written. You are walking around with ancient sunlight pressed into your skin. The light that fell on people whose names are gone, whose languages are gone, whose stories are gone, that light left a mark. And that mark got passed down, generation after generation, until it landed on you. The person next to you, with a different shade, carries a different set of ancient skies, a different migration route, a different UV story, not a different humanity. The same one, expressed differently by a different set of environments. This is what biology actually says about race. It says variation is real. It says skin color differences are real. It says those differences have causes that can be understood, traced, explained. But it does not say those differences divide humanity into separate kinds. It does not say any group is further from or closer to some ideal. It does not map cleanly onto the categories humans invented and then enforced with law and violence for centuries. Biology says one species, endlessly flexible, endlessly adaptive, shaped by environment, not destiny, varied by location, not by rank. Skin color is proof that humans could survive anywhere on Earth, that we left one place and figured out, body by body, generation by generation, how to live in all the others. That we are, at the level of biology, one of the most successful and adaptable species this planet has ever produced. Every shade is a survival story. And every person alive today is the end of an unbroken chain of ancestors who were extraordinary enough, resilient enough, adaptable enough to make it through. That's what your skin is telling you, not what you've been taught, not what the history books built on power wrote, what your own body, your own ancient, sun-shaped, migration-carrying body has been saying all along.